Okay, so let's see then. I'm guessing, Jose, you said you're done. So would you like to share your creative writing with us and tell us if you could have a drink with someone from history, who would it be? You can paste it into the chat so we can all read it, please.
Okay, but by the way, I'm not Jose. Jose is my husband.
Oh, okay. What's your name?
I'm Adriana. He paid for the service, so I don't know why the computer took his mail,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm the one that is using the the service. This is a class that I am on, and well, I don't know a lot about this, but I just trying. Okay.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Sure, Adriana. Well, it's nice to meet you, and I'm sorry I kept calling you by your husband's name.
It's all right. No problem.
Okay. So why don't you share your story in the chat with us, please?
Okay. So where I type?
Yeah, there's a blue button that you can see at the top corner of your screen that says chat.
Can I be the second, please?
Of course. Okay. Diego, why don't you share with us your story?
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
I would like, I put in the...
If you could paste it into the chat.
Into the chat.
Right here.
Can you see?
Not in the Verbling chat, but in the
okay.
In the like the Google Plus chat.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. All right. So Diego, why don't you go ahead and read your story for us?
Okay. I would like to have a drink with Beethoven because I love music, and especially classical music. Creating music is one of the most amazing things that I've ever known. When I think about the difficult to express feelings with some notes, I realize the great talent that composers had. It's a challenge for me to write only a little melody, and he was able to join a lot of instruments and obtain a spectacular music 300 years ago. In this particular case, Beethoven was dumb at the end of his career, so he has an additional difficulty to compose, it said. He has to write all the melodies in his own brain, with no support of external signals. But what is more impressionant? Definitely is one of the most incredible composers of any time in spite of his terrible character. It said that he used to be angry the most part of the time, but who is perfect in this little world? Because I was bored, I write another thing. I have a few minutes more to write about another topic, so I have chosen to tell you why my life is changing. 2 years ago, I bought a book called 7 Habits of High Effective People. It showed me a different way to face the life. It's based in 7 principles that allow you to redesign your way of doing things. The main knowledge of the book is that you are able to change your life if you want, because it doesn't depend on your work or where you was born. You are the only person in the world who has the power to change. First step is that you have a goal in your mind.
Oh, good, good. I think I've heard of that book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's a very common book for people who want to be successful in work or they want to improve their lives. So that's very interesting. Are you still reading the book? Is it helping you still?
Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll have to check that out. So do you mind if I read your story just to go over it, and I'll look for any mistakes or anything?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll point out, I noticed a couple, but I'll point out just some ones that I think are very easily fixed. So Diego writes, I would like to have a drink with Beethoven because I love music, in special classical music. Okay, so instead of saying in special, you want to say especially. It's very similar, but it's especially like that. Okay? A lot of people get confused and they think that special and especially are the same thing, but they're completely different. Special is more of an adjective, and especially is an adverb. So you have to be careful of how to use them. Okay, back to your story. Creating music is one of the most amazing things that I've ever known. When I think about the difficulty, if you're talking about it as a noun, it's difficulty. When I think about the difficulty to compose, whoops, I'm in the wrong spot. When I think about the difficulty to express feelings with some notes, I realize the great talent that the composer had. It's a challenge for me to write only a little melody, and he was able to join a lot of instruments and obtain a spectacular music. So actually there's no E in the front of that word. And this is a really common mistake for Spanish speakers, because I believe that you don't have any words that start with just SP, but there's always ESP, like for example, España. But oftentimes in English the words would just begin right with SP, like Spain. Spectacular music 300 years ago. In this particular case, Beethoven was dumb at the end of his career. I think you mean that he was deaf.
Oh, deaf.
He couldn't hear. Dumb means that you cannot speak. So sometimes deaf people are also dumb, but I think he must have been able to speak, so he was deaf.
I was doing about the 2 words and I put
Just flip the words there. Okay? So he had an additional difficulty to compose. It said he had to write all the melodies in his own brain without... So here's a tricky thing about English. We can't have what's called a double negative. So if we say without, that means a negative, without. It's like not with, without, and then we can't say no. So you have to say without any support. Okay, because you can't have a double negative. Like you couldn't say, I don't not want to see the movie. No good. Okay? Without any support of external signals. What is more, okay, so I bet somebody else in the class might know. We don't say impressionant, but there is an ending to the word impress, and the ending is, what is more?
Impressive.
Exactly, impressive. So this was probably a translation from Spanish, I'm guessing. What is more impressive? Definitely, it's one of the most incredible composers of any time in spite of his terrible character, okay? So remember that we are only using it if it's not a man or a woman. So he's one of the most incredible composers of any time in spite of his terrible character. I did hear he had a terrible character. It said that he used to be angry, not anger, but angry, adjective, most of the time. But who is perfect in this little world? I love your ending. That's so true. Who is perfect in this little world? That's great. Thank you, Diego. And I won't correct this other part because you just did it for practice. But I'm glad you took the time to share with us more writing. So just for Spanish speakers, be aware that most of our words that start with SP, like spectacular, they don't have the E, but then sometimes they do, like as in the case of especially. And make sure you know when are you using the noun form of something and when are you using the adjective form of something. For example, anger and angry. But that's good. I think I'd like to meet Beethoven too, but I heard that he was very rude at dinner parties, so maybe not. Let's see, Adriana, are you ready to share your story?
I think so.
Okay. You want to paste that into the chat?
Let me try it.
Sure.
Well, okay, it's ready. It's a short paragraph, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Ready?
Yes. Okay, so go ahead and read your story when you're ready.
If I could have if I could have a drink with someone from history, it could be John Paul II, the Pope, because he was a very kind person. I would have liked to ask him about his life, everything about his background. He lived during a difficult and important event for all the humankind, but the way very unpleasant. And I'm pretty sure that he knew a lot of real events that happened during the Second War. He was a wise man, and I imagine that if I had him in front of me, I would feel a lot of peace. He really was a very important person in my life.
Okay, very interesting. That's a good choice. So I'll read your story. If I could have a drink with someone from history, it would be John Paul II, the Pope. So you can actually just refer to him as Pope John Paul II because he was a very kind person. I would have liked to ask him about his life, everything about his background. He lived during a difficult and important event for all humankind. So here's a really good example of when do we use the definite article the. If you're talking about something in general, a concept of something, an idea of something, for example, humankind, we're not talking about the human over there or the human, like the human person who lives next door. You're talking about humankind in general. So there's no need to have the as a definite article because it's just speaking in general terms. So
All
think
right.
about it. Do you need the? Is it general or is it specific?
Okay, I
Um,
got it.
by the way, very unpleasant. And I'm pretty sure that he knew a lot of real events that happened during the Second World War. So you have to say the Second World War. He was a wise man, and I imagine that if I had him in front of me, I would feel a lot of peace. He really was a very important person in my life. Good, and that's a great choice. I think I very much would like to have met John Paul II. He was a great pope. What about the current pope? Would you like to have a drink with the current pope?
Mm, I don't know. I don't think so. I,
No?
I really, I really fall in love with John Paul because he had a very I don't know, special way to be, special way to speak to the people,
Mm-hmm.
be nice with everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know a lot about the new Pope.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Maybe have to give him some more time. He's a very interesting pope, though. You have to admit, he's a very interesting pope.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you, Adriana.
Thanks.
Um, there weren't very many mistakes at all. It's just a few little things, but one other note I would like to give you is just to work on punctuation. So when you have a complete sentence, you want to make sure instead of joining it with a comma, such as I would have liked to ask him about his life, everything about his background, then there should be a period there, not a comma.
Okay.
Good. And then just more, if they're a complete sentence, you need to set them off with a period. But that's me being picky because I teach writing at a college here in California, so I can be very picky.
Yeah.
Uh, good. Any questions about that?
No, thanks.
Okay, who's next? Who's my next victim? Is it Adela? Do you want to go next?
Okay.
Will you type your or paste your story into the chat? Great. Okay, so Adela, if you could read your story.
Um, okay. I have the. If I could have a drink with someone from history, I would like to be. I didn't know. I was not capable to choose only one person. The first moment I thought a politician, but which one? A bit for me was Martin Luther King and his famous speech where he said, I have a dream. But another famous slogan was 5 years ago when the President Obama and his we can, but he's alive. I didn't look I look correct.
Oh, you could choose
Then,
someone who's alive.
no, it's then I thought a scientist can be a good option, better than a politician. Scientists achieve important goals. Their challenges are important for the human race, for the society concretely. When I had decided, uh, uh, when I had decided, well, I will write about historical scientists, I understood that I had the same problem. I had changed the job, but I didn't solve my problem, the election.
Ooh, interesting. Interesting. So what do you mean by that? I didn't solve my problem, the election. Like
Yeah.
the selection? You mean your choice?
Selection.
Oh,
The
okay. So who
choice.
you're going to choose.
No.
Well, I can think of a few famous historical scientists. Maybe you'd like to have a drink with um, Pierre and Marie Curie.
Curie, for
Hmm.
example,
Or
or Archimedes, or there are a
hmm
lot.
Archimedes, or maybe even
Or
Albert
Newton,
Einstein.
Newton,
Hmm. Or
there are a
perhaps
lot.
somebody who discovered another planet or discovered something about outer space. That'd be really
Or
interesting.
Linneo, or Darwin.
Oh, that would be my choice. If I had to pick a historical scientist, I would pick Darwin because I'm fascinated
Yes,
by his work.
yes,
Great.
I think it's.
And that's a good choice. Okay, so I'm going to read your story over and just help you out with some of your mistakes. If I could have a drink with someone from history, I would like to be, and then when you say I didn't know, you mean when you were choosing, you didn't know. I would
Uh,
like to choose, or not I would like to be, but you could say I would like it to be, meaning your choice.
um, I in the past, because the first is your sentence is text. Hmm?
I'm not sure
Sorry.
I understand.
No, this is a different tense. I think, no, a
Mm-hmm.
little, because the first is your sentence, literal, no,
Mm-hmm.
your sentence.
Yes.
But the other is my about. I think.
Okay,
I
so
thought.
your thoughts in the past. Yeah, in the moment when you had to decide, you didn't know. Okay? I was
Yeah.
not capable to choose only one person. In the first moment, I thought about a politician, but which one? Okay, so you said a Veep, but you actually should say a VIP and say each letter individually. And so VIP, do you know what that stands for?
Very important person. No?
Exactly. So you have to pronounce VIP because when you say Veep, that does mean something in English, but Veep means the vice president. The vice president of the United States, the second in
Uh-huh.
command. So if you
Okay.
say Veep, that means a specific VIP, the vice president.
Yes,
A
it's
VIP,
necessary to have the acronym, no? Also.
yes. A VIP for me was Martin Luther King. Don't forget he was Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his famous speech where he said, "I have a dream." But another famous slogan was 5 years ago when you can just say President Obama. You don't have to say the president. President Obama and his "We can." But he's alive and I didn't look correct. What do you mean by I didn't look correct? I didn't
I
think
didn't
that was
seem
correct?
seem correct. I
Okay. So that didn't seem correct to pick someone who was alive?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
because they are historical. I thought
True.
that died, or
That's true. It might have to be someone from history, although I'm sure that President Obama will be in our history books. But he's alive and it didn't seem correct. Then I thought a scientist can be a good option, better than a politician. Scientists achieve, so it's pronounced achieve.
achieve.
Good. Important goals. Their challenges are important for the human race, for the society concretely. You can just say for society. Again, that's one of those kind of uncountable nouns. When I had decided, well, I will write about a historical scientist, I understood that I had the same problem. I had changed the job, but I didn't solve my problem. The selection.
Choose
Or
selection.
The choice, the selection. The election just refers to politicians, but I understood your meaning. Good. Okay, so maybe you can have one of those interesting historical scientists. Yeah, I actually picked a historical scientist for my choice too, so you'll see that when I share my story. But very good job, Adela. I like your thought process. We say thought process. You explain your thinking as you're writing. Good. Okay, and how about you, Ahmad? Can you share your story with us?
Sorry, yeah. Well, I haven't finished, but I will post it.
Sure.
Here. Okay. Sorry about that because the problem is I have written mine on one of what do you call it? Not iPad, sorry.
Oh, I see.
Not pad, not pad. I
Oh,
mean,
notepad. You wrote it
notepad.
down?
Yeah. Well,
Good.
there you go.
Okay. Okay, so why don't you read your story?
Okay. I like reading books and magazines, but every time I do that, something comes to mind. I wonder how human being, I don't know, is it supposed to be written like this or not? Human beings invented the alphabets that we use to express our ideas, opinions, and feelings on paper. That, I don't know, piques my curiosity, and I would like to have the chance to meet that genius person who has changed the traditional way of keeping information from loss or forgetfulness, from memorizing and word of mouth to words written on
Mm.
paper or something like that. But I couldn't finish, you know. Sorry.
That's great. I love it. It's so you don't know exactly who because we
Yeah.
don't know who invented the alphabet, but they say that there's lots of different stories about who invented the alphabet and who invented writing on paper. But do you know who they say invented writing on paper?
No, really, I don't know.
Anyone know? Who were the people that invented writing on paper? It was the ancient Egyptians.
Ah,
They say that the ancient Egyptians invented papyrus, the first form of paper, and their way of transcribing notes, of writing, was the first form of recording something on paper. So they were recording things before. They were writing things on walls, and we have cave drawings and things like that. But the Egyptians were the first people to use any form of paper. However, other people like to argue that the Chinese had already invented paper at the same time or before the Egyptians. So it depends on which side of the world you're from, if you believe it was the Egyptians or if you believe it was the Chinese. I think it was the Egyptians. Okay, very
interesting.
good. Yeah, so I'm going to read your story real quick. I like
Yes.
reading books and magazines, but every time I do that, something comes to mind. I wonder how human beings invented the alphabets that we use to express our ideas, opinions, and feelings on paper. That piques my curiosity. I love this phrase, piques my curiosity. It means it starts my curiosity, makes me interested.
Yeah.
And I would like to have the chance to meet the genius person who has changed the traditional way of keeping information from loss or forgetfulness and from memorizing and word of mouth to words. Very good. There's no mistakes as far as I can tell. So word of mouth is a great phrase to know. It just means information that is passed by speaking without
Yeah.
writing it down. So
Yes.
for anyone who doesn't know that phrase, word of mouth is very useful to know. That's great. Good job, Ahmad. And I agree. I'd love to meet that person too because I'm so interested in language and I'm so interested in where it all came from, writing and language. Well, it's very
Okay.
appropriate. Okay, well, we still have a few minutes. I'm going to share what I wrote and maybe teach you a little bit about an American you might not have heard of before. So I said, if I could have a drink with someone from history, I would want to have a drink with Margaret Mead, an American anthropologist who studied the people and cultures of the South Pacific. She was a fascinating woman who lived on the island of Samoa, where she studied and wrote about the traditions of the Samoan people. She was also a very influential female figure at the time, because she decided that she did not want to live a quiet and simple life, but she wanted to dedicate her life to studying cultures that were different from her own. I would like to ask her what it was like in her first days on the island of Samoa. Was she scared? I also would like to know how she learned to speak the Samoan language, and if anyone was able to help her. I would also like to ask her what she thinks are the best parts of Samoan culture, and how they compare to our actions in our shared native culture. She seems like a person who would be able to give me so much insight in how to travel in the world without fearing for my safety, and also how to follow your dreams. Have any of you heard of Margaret Mead before?
No, I never.
No.
She's a very famous American anthropologist. She spent most of her life studying the people of this island in the South Pacific called Samoa. And she wrote about their traditions, and particularly she wrote about how men and women are treated in their society. And people in the United States who read her book were absolutely shocked by the differences in their culture and how women were treated more equally to men. So that's something I think is very interesting. And she has this great quote that I wanted to share. Let me see if I can put some space there. Okay, so here's a quote from Margaret Mead. Okay, one of her most famous quotes is, "Never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." She lived from 1901 to 1978. And she was born in Philadelphia, I think, and she was a professor of anthropology, and she helped to inspire other people to learn about these other cultures in the world. And as someone who's interested in languages, I find her very inspiring. I'd like to follow in her footsteps and perhaps go and study another culture in some remote part of the world. But I'd like to study their language more than their culture. Some people are doing that now. They're trying to record all of the languages that are dying out in the world. So students and linguists are going to the Amazon and they're going to Africa, and they are trying to record these tribal languages before they are all replaced.
By the way, where is this island located? I never heard of it, sorry.
Yeah, it's in the South Pacific, which is between South America and Australia, in the Pacific Ocean. So it's closer to Australia by, so like Australia, you have Fiji and Bora Bora and...
Yeah, there are some islands over there, but I don't remember the names. That's why I see.
Yeah, so Samoa is an island that actually, it's now part of the United States. So it's a protected territory. So you can be a Samoan and you can be an American, Samoan American. And the Samoans are very interesting culture that for a very long time had no contact with the outside world. So Margaret Mead went there, and she was maybe, I think, 24 when she first went to Samoa, 24-year-old woman who arrived on the island, and she had to learn to speak Samoan, and she learned to live in their culture, and I think it would be so interesting to have a drink with her.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Sounds like you'd be interested too, considering your interest in languages.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, yeah, so everyone, that was a great quick write, and not many mistakes at all, so you're all well on your way to becoming proficient writers in English.
Hope so.
Yeah, okay, so that's it for today's class. Thank you all for coming to my class, and I hope to see you in future classes, and hopefully we can work on our writing skills some more.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. See you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.